Hi, I'm Maggie Weldon from maggiescrochet.com, and this video is sponsored by Premier Yarns. I'm so excited to show you the Afghan I arm knitted last week, and we actually did a video in progress of the entire making of this Afghan. It's awesome, and that's going to be on YouTube. For this Afghan, I started out thinking that I was going to use 12 skeins of Deborah Norville Serenity chunky yarn, and I ended up using only 8 skeins. And I used 4 strands at one time. And if you wanted a thicker Afghan, you'd need to use like 6 or 8 strands. And I am going to try this again using 8 strands. But it's super soft and really lacy, as you can see here. And the finished size is probably around 40 inches, 45 inches wide by 70 inches long. But it's very stretchy, so it's hard to get a super accurate measurement on this. And Serenity chunky weight yarn is number 5 yarn, and it comes in 50 plus colors. It also comes in like glitters and other textured or heather yarns, so it's all interchangeable with this. And so like I said, I used 8 skeins, and I would recommend doubling that. And so a total number of skeins, if you went with 6 strands, would be 12 skeins. And if you went with 8 strands, you would need 16 skeins, which I don't think would be too bad for an Afghan. The skill level is super easy, and I'm going to go to a close-up shot to show you how to cast on and then bind off at the end. And the first thing I need to show you on this set is how to measure for your long tail. I'm going to show you how to do what's called a long tail cast on. So you need to measure off 9 yards for the long tail for the cast on. So the way I measure a yard is to just stretch from here to here, and you might want to measure that with a yardstick or a tape measure. But you need to measure off 9 yards, and then when I go to close up, I'll show you how to make a slip knot at the 9-yard mark. So I cast on 27 stitches for this Afghan, and there's other arm knitting projects like the scarf that you see me wearing here, and those are all, the links to everything will be listed below. And now I'm going to take you to a close-up to show you how to make this Afghan. To cast on for the arm knitted Afghan, you measure off 9 yards, and this is called your long tail, and this is referred to as a long tail cast on. And then at the 9-yard mark, you make a slip knot right here. And to do that, you just wrap your yarn around like this, and then that back strand there goes halfway across the circle in the back, and you pull that forward. You'll notice there's a knot side and a slip side. So you want to tighten the knot side and then open up the slip side so it's wide enough to go on your arm. So I'm going to cast onto my right arm here. Now, because there's so many loops on your arm at one time, you have to make sure that the loop is big enough to slide all the way up to this part of your arm, because you'll be pushing a lot of loops over that way. So that's important right there. Now, this long tail will be used for the cast on, and once I use this, I won't be using this strand of yarn anymore. So you'll notice as I'm casting on that this is the yarn that makes up the loops that go on my arm for the cast on. And this slip knot is considered the first stitch. So I want to have 27 stitches for the Afghan on my arm, so I need to cast on 26 more stitches. This yarn over here is called my working yarn. So I've got the 4 strands, and I've got my 9 yards measured out. So now I'm going to drop this down, and hopefully it'll cooperate with me. Okay, so now to cast on, I am going to have this over here and my working yarn over here, And I'm just going to go in like this, and I'll bring up 2 loops. And I need to move this loop down a little bit so I can use this hand. So, and then I'm going to go on this side of that loop and just pick up that strand right there. This loop here gets dropped off, and this one gets picked up. And that was picked up from this long tail. So now I'm going to tighten it, but I don't want to tighten it too much. I want to tighten it to be equal to this one because I know it'll slide up to my arm right there. So maybe just like that. Okay, so again, I'm going to go in here like this, and I'm going to go on this side of this loop and just pick this one up, drop this loop over that loop, and then slide that new loop onto my hand. So just tighten a little bit. Now I'm going to go like this again, reach in here and grab that strand right there and pull that through like this. Let this one drop and then put the new one up and just tighten real light. You don't want to tighten too much. You can tighten more when you're doing a scarf, but for an Afghan, when you're going to have a bunch of loops on here, they have to be loose. So right here, I'm going to go on this side of that loop, pick up this loop, bring it through and let that drop. Again, go up like this, go on this side, reach over and grab that strand, let this loop fall down, and bring that one up. So you just continue like that until you have 27 loops on your arm. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I'll come back on camera and show you how to do one of the rows, and then I'll show you how to bind off. Since this is a demo of the arm knitted Afghan, I figured I would just do a, not all the 27 stitches, but once you get all 27 stitches on your hand, then you'll continue on with row 1. And you won't be using any leftover yarn from your long tail, so this will be pushed aside, or you could trim it off, maybe about a yard out you could trim off. So to start row 1, you would hold the working yarn now. That's all you're going to be concerned about is your working yarn. You would hold it in your hand, and all you do is move the loop over it like this, and then move that loop over to your other hand. So once you get a row started, you'll always be reaching over to the other hand to pick up the working yarn. That's how you know if you lose your place, which I do quite often. All you have to remember is that, oh yeah, I have to reach over to the other hand to get my yarn, so then you know you're doing it right. And it would never be something like this where that yarn is over here. You have to reach for it when you're got a row in progress. So I'm just gonna hold on to this, the yarn comes back to this hand, and I'm gonna push that loop off, and it literally just drops off, and I pull it over here, and then I tug on this a little bit. But again, I don't want it super tight because I still need these all to fit on my arm. So I'm gonna slide this one off onto that strand and that strand on my opposite arm, and then hold on to this, drop this off like this, and slide that on. So you can see the forming of row 1 stitches right here. These are the knit stitches that you're seeing on this side. I'm going to get some yarn here, hold up. Ideally, I think it's best to have all your yarn rolled out in separate balls, or whatever you have to do, so you're not pulling and trying to figure out how to, you know. So I kind of, in my mind, I was like, okay, which side am I on? So I know that if I have to reach over to this side, then I'm taking these loops off. So I'm going to hold on to my working yarn, pull this off, and move it over. Oops, I pulled off my, you don't want to do that. I pulled off my, I started working with my with my long tail. So you don't want to do that. That's confusing. Okay, I'm going to drop that down here so I don't do that again. So you don't want to start working with your long tail. So I'm back on track here, and I reached over to my opposite hand, and I'm pulling this off and that over there. And then I tighten just a little. And then I keep doing that until all the loops are over onto the opposite hand. Then you can move these loops down and push them up here. It takes about 2 hours to make this Afghan. I was thinking an hour. I don't know why I was thinking that, but 2 hours is more realistic. Maybe even 3. And if you need to stop and go do something, you can just take all your yarn with you and just wait till you have all the loops over onto one hand. Okay, so right there is the end of row 1. So the nice thing about this is you can mix and match colors, or you could, you know, put in different dye lots. It doesn't really matter. So I think it's beautiful. And ideally too, I would recommend doing 6 or even 8 strands instead of, I'm doing 4 strands at a time. But I really think a good, nice, full Afghan would have to be done with 8 strands. And this is the Deborah Norville Serenity Chunky yarn that I'm using here. So now, I'll show you how to go to the other side. I'm going to pull up some yarn here. Okay, so now, to go to the other side, I need to hold the yarn over here, like this, and then I slide this loop off and push it back over to the opposite side. So you just keep doing this back and forth. I'm going to complete this row, and then I'm always tightening this just a little bit. So I'm going over here, tighten just a little, work that off, put it over here. So the working strand is held by the hand that is getting the loops taken off. Here. And you always want to make sure you're picking up 4, because sometimes you could pick up just 3 and then you got to backtrack. And that's not the easiest thing to do, especially when you're doing a big project like this. Okay, last one of this row, like this. It's kind of nice when you get an arm free. Okay, so that's the end of row 2. And you notice this side that's facing you will look like the knit stitches, and this side over here is a different look to it. I think those are the purl stitches. I don't know. I'm not that great on knitting. I used to knit when I was young, but okay. But I'm madly in love with this arm knitting. I think it's really awesome. Okay, so now once you get this, you use up all your skeins of yarn. Let's say for the arm knitted Afghans, I used up 8 skeins, and so I had 2 groups of 4 strands going through. So when I got down to the end, I made sure that I had the same length, 9 yards at the end, and you want to start, you need to go, oh, I've only got like 9 yards left and it's time to bind off, because you have to have this extra yarn in order to get these stitches bound off correctly. So you want to stop when you have at least 9 yards. Maybe you should stop at like 20 yards or whatever, just to make sure. And this is a pretty big size. It landed up being, I don't know, it's very stretchy, so it landed up being a good size for an Afghan though. Okay, now to bind off, It doesn't matter which arm all the stitches land up on. So, and the bind off is the same regardless of which arm they land up on. So what you want to do is knit 2 stitches. So I'm just going to hold this in here, and then I'm going to pull this off, put this over here. Just knit them like you've been doing. And I'm still snugging the stitches a little bit. Okay, now you knit 2 off. You take the first one that you knit off and you pull it over the second one like this, and you just let it drop onto the working strand of yarn. And then, so that's a stitch that's been bound off. So now you pick up the yarn over here again, you knit another stitch, put it over here like that, and I want to tighten it just a little bit, and I'm going to take the previous loop and bring it over the new loop and let that drop. So I'm going to hold this again, and then I'm going to knit another stitch, put that over here, tighten it a little bit, take the previous loop, bring it over the new loop, and let it drop off. So these stitches are being bound off. So now hold on to this, make sure you got 4 strands, and move that off like this. Go over here, tighten it a little bit, slip that one over that one, and that's the next one. So strand back over here, knit the next stitch, snug it up a little bit, take the previous 4 strands and move it over the new 4 strands, let that drop, pick your yarn up again, knit the next stitch like this, put it over here, tighten it a little bit, take the previous loop, let it drop over the new loop, and just keep going in the same pattern. Tighten this a little bit, move this off, this goes over here, this goes right here, this goes here, tighten a little bit, drop the old loop over the new loop, hold this, knit the next stitch like this, hold that, new old loop over new loop, okay, then knit the next stitch. It's such a relief after 2 hours or 2 to 3 hours of having that whole Afghan on your arms. When you bind off and you get them completely off, it's wonderful. Okay, so drop this stitch, knit the last one here, put that up here, tighten it a little bit, drop that one over that one. Okay, 1 stitch remaining. Don't let this go. What you want to do is cut your yarn about maybe a foot away like this. Okay, and you have your last loop on your hook, and all you do is you pull the side of that loop that's cut, you pull it all the way through, and if you pull that, it locks the last loop that you took off like that. Okay, so if you look at this, you notice that it looks like chain stitches in crochet. It's got these loops on the end. So all you do now is cut your long tail, and then take this with your hands and just weave it back into the Afghan like that. That is it. So make sure you watch all the arm knitting videos. I'm also going to be doing some tips that are going to be super helpful, and the tips will include things like figuring out how long your long tail needs to be depending on how wide you want to make your scarf, figuring out how much yarn you're going to need, I'm going to do a gauge samples of the yarn, how to figure out your gauge, and like for Afghans, I think they should be a little bit fuller than this. And then for the cowls though, I think this is perfect. And typically the cowls are made with maybe 3 strands. So even the 4 strands would be super good for the cowls because they're kind of like loose and drapey fitting. So this doesn't take very long, and I think it'd be a lot of fun to just experiment with all the different yarns you have and just have fun with it. So I want to thank you for watching, and the video that you are watching is part of an entire channel, and that channel name is Maggie Weldon, or it's Premier Yarns. And if you subscribe to the channel then and the feed, as soon as new videos come out, you'll be notified, and we're having videos come out all the time, several a week. So the links to everything is listed below, and thank you for watching.